Hello, welcome to the Big Fight, where we are going to turn our attention on that big subject of the day, which is, of course, the economy. There have been people expressing concern about it and what direction is it going in, and is it really entering some sort of a crisis zone? Is it a cold, as some people say, including Bibek Debroy? Is it something more serious, as in fact Yashwant Sinha said? And the comments made by former Finance Minister and a member of the BJP Margdarshak Council, Yashwant Sinha, this week has really brought the issue squarely onto the center stage. Not least because immediately after that, Yashwant Sinha's son Jayant came out and said, look, this is all being exaggerated a bit and the economy really isn't in that bad a shape. Now, we're going to try and stay clear on this show of some of that wrangling, what Yashwant Sinha said, and should he have said it, and should Jayant Sinha have responded, and what's going on out there. Let's just step back from all of this just for the next 45-50 minutes or so. Because in this program, I'd like to try and understand, if there is a problem with the economy, then what's the reason for it? Because you can't really diagnose, whether it's a cold or whether it's something more serious, you can't really diagnose or you can't really treat an illness until you've been able to diagnose it correctly. So you've seen that famous serial 13 Reasons Why, but on this show, we're going to try and look at the 5 reasons why. 5 possible reasons why the economy is right now in the shape it is. And then we'll see if we can get all of our experts. You've got top experts out here who will tell us whether they think that those are the right reasons or whether it's something else. And if any of these is not the reason, then perhaps we can identify that as well. So very quickly, without further ado, let me quickly take you through 5 of the reasons why, at least according to me, and then I'm going to throw that to the experts. So first of all, the reason which many people are talking about are those 2 big shocks that the economy has received. So number 1, demonetization. Is that the reason why? Is that the reason why the economy is in the situation it is? Some would say that's obviously been a shock and it wasn't a complete success. Others would say, well, look, it's a year has passed, so surely the effects of demonetization could not be carrying on till now. The second big shock, a very major reform which everyone has been asking for a long period of time. You can question as to whether it was implemented correctly or not. It did provide a shock, and that was GST. So is that the reason why there are issues right now? Or the other factors? Many in the government will say that the real reason why we are facing problems with the economy is because of high interest rates, and that's something the RBI needs to take some responsibility for. RBI should be cutting rates. RBI will say inflation starting to move back up, not quite that simple to do. So high interest rates, is that the reason why? Fine. Fourth, we have the issue of high NPAs. Let's remember, the private sector can't really come out and invest in the manner that it should, because large company after large company is bogged down right now by very high debt burdens, and the government's not really being able to solve that out. The banks are reeling under high NPAs, the steel sector, infrastructure sectors, even the telecom sector, the darling of so many people these days, all of them reeling under debt burdens, which is why they can't invest. So is that the reason why? And finally, something which many people say has been one of the banes of the Indian economy. The NDA came to power promising to sort it out. Many will say, not yet happened. If anything, things are worse. It's all that Inspector Raj and the compliance burdens and the petty bureaucracy and the tax terrorism that actually makes doing business so very difficult. And many will say that isn't really better right now. If anything, it's worse. 5th possible reason why. Now let me go to the experts. We first discuss my 5 reasons why, and then maybe all of you can come in with your own versions as what should be done. So without further ado, let me introduce all the great experts we have out here. Professor Arun Kumar, economist, has been really helping to dissect demonetization and its aftermath and its impact on the economy. R. Balashankar is from BJP, member of the BJP Central Committee on Training, former convener BJP National Intellectual Cell. So it's great to have you with us. M.K. Venu is one of the founding editor of The Wire and also one of the top financial journalists that I can think of. Sajid Chinoy, it's always a privilege to have you with us, Indian economist at JP Morgan, so it's great to have you with us. Shankar Iyer is joining us, who's well-known financial journalist, also author of Aadhaar, a biometric history of India's 12-digit revolution. Devendra Sharma, food policy analyst and expert, can tell us what he thinks is happening in rural India. And last but by no means the least is Rajiv Gowda, Congress spokesperson and Rajya Sabha MP, to give us his particular take. All right, Gentlemen, first of all, I just want to ask whether, in addition to the 5 reasons why that I listed, whether any of you have other candidates, then we'll introduce them in as the 6th wildcard entry. So, first of all, Bala Sirabani, let's start with you. Are those fair reasons why you think the economy could be in problem? We'll of course discuss whether the economy is in problems or not. I'm sure you'll say that it's actually doing fine. But are those sounds like correct reasons, or would you have some other explanation?
See, Vikram, to my point, all the 5 reasons are there, but they are also intensifying, in a way, helping the economy. So, this is part of the overall economy restructuring that we have started. And what is happening is that a great transformation is taking place in the economy, and that is redistribution of wealth that is happening in the country. And when you talk about crisis, I have to say that there is no crisis, there is a slowdown. A crisis is where, if there is balance of payment problem, we have the highest foreign exchange reserve today. Our revenue is quite high. We are getting a lot of collections, and then there is no inflation as such. The tax burden is actually trying to be limited to the extent that once the GST is in place, we are going to have a system where one of the best and unique system that we are.
So you're saying there's no crisis, it's a slowdown, it's part of a transformation. And no, some of the steps that I mentioned, I mean, I'm sure you don't think that the NPAs or tax terrorism or, in fact, high interest rates are necessarily.
No, I want to say one thing. See, there is no scarcity in this for essential commodities. There is no inflation, and there is no problem of unemployment as you are talking about. Coal production is one of the best in history. Agriculture production is one of the best in history.
No problem right now.
In the last 10 years, we had no private investment. Today, it is picking up. So, overall, there is hope in the economy, and there is a chance that in the next 1 year or so, we are going to have an economy that is going to boom. That is what I am saying.
Okay, Rajiv Gowda.
Vikram, it's puja season, so it's time for prayers. And so, what my friend has just said are all hopes or aspirations. They do not mirror the reality that exists in India today. Your points about the 4 or 5 factors that have caused this downturn and this what you might call a Modi slump, these are perfectly on target. You could add terms like incompetence of the government in terms of managing. I'd like to add 2 more points. One is the high level of indirect taxation. Indirect taxation hurts the poor. It is, if you look at the excise duties, etc., on petroleum products, just for instance, you will see that these have been ratcheted up continuously and providing a huge, fiscal boost to the government in terms of revenues, but at the cost of the common man, and then at the cost of consumption. That's one. The second is the shattering of the sort of non-formal economy. See, there's a large part of India which used to operate in cash, whether it's small or medium enterprises, or petty entrepreneurs, agriculture, etc. They've all been hurt by demonetisation, by GST, etc. Been forced to import more because possibly, I think Sajid has just written about that, about how the SME sector may have been badly impacted, and as a result, we are again seeing a lot of negative fallout, and that negative fallout is in job-creating sectors. Okay. And of course, there is the impact on the leather industry as a result of the cow protection going berserk.
Okay, Shankar Iyer, let me get you in on this first. The 5 reasons that I said, would you like to add any to that? And again, would you agree that there's a problem, or is there no problem right now?
Well, Vikram, WhatsAppically speaking, all is well. But factually speaking, there are a lot of issues, and I have more questions than answers. I mean, in an economy where the crude oil, the largest import rates have been steady, where there have been 2 stimulus packages, one in the form of the 7th Pay Commission and second in the form of loan waivers, you still find consumption going down. And if the GDP growth is sliding in a secular fashion for 6 quarters, there is something to be concerned about. I won't call it a crisis, but there is a specter out there that we must recognize. And the issue really, above all the 5 factors that you've said, is that there is a transformation that has happened to the Indian economy which is not being recognized. We have been sort of nudged out of the manufacturing sector. You just have to look at the import list of India, the products that we import, and what that has done to demand and investment in the manufacturing sector. Above all, I think the real big elephant is rural distress, and nobody wants to call it by name. I think that is the real cause of much of the pain that we see. And this has been aggravated. I won't say Demo and GST are originators. I think they are aggravating factors.
All right. Devendra Sharma, let me just get you in. He said rural distress. Are you seeing a lot of rural distress, or is that being overplayed a bit?
The fact of the matter is, the agriculture is in a terrible distress today, and this has been compounded by demonetization, and has also been compounded by the recent problems that we see with the weather. First we had floods, and then we have now indication that we're going to have a drought in 265 districts of the country. And don't forget, demonetization happened when we had after 2 back-to-back drought years. And even in a progressive state like Punjab, every day farmers are dying, and on almost all the parts of the country, farmers are protesting, although the media doesn't talk about it, but agriculture distress is acute. Now, having said that, I think one thing again I want to make it clear, whatever we might say the indicators are looking good or very good, or at least going to perform better in the years to come, I think the biggest problem is there are no jobs. For last 13 years, we haven't had job creation in this country, the kind of jobs that we should have been having, despite our GDP going up to 8 or 9 or staying at 8 or 9 for quite some time. If in 10 years of the UPA regime, only 1.5 crore jobs were created, and in the last 3 years, only 6.5 lakh jobs have been created, then I think there's something terribly going wrong. You can't measure by the GDP growth rate or the other indicators that have been spelled out by other colleagues. But the fact of the matter is, we are trying to push farmers out of agriculture to come and fill up the slot of the hardy mazdoor in the cities. On the one hand, we don't have jobs in the cities, and on the other hand, we are trying bringing all policies to push farmers out of agriculture, including the imports going up tremendously.
Farmers' distress is out there. I want to get Sajid Chinoy to weigh in on some of them. But let me just start off now with all of you on the first of the possible reasons why, which is demonetization. Can I just turn to you, because you are here with us discussing demonetization. The benefits of demonetization clearly now have a huge question mark over them, right? A lot of the black money came back, so on and so forth. Yes, there is a process of transformation that Mr. Balashankar spoke about, which it did help in kickstarting digital payments, a certain different type of an economy, and there may be big dividends to that going forward, a lot more people coming into the tax net. All of that is a potential benefit of demonetization that's yet to be tested. If anybody says, though, that demonetization is partly to be blamed for the present slowdown, would that be a fair thing to say? Because after all these months, surely the effect should have gone by now.
So demonetization, what effect did it have? It affected the unorganized sector, which employs 93% of the workforce, produces 45% of the output. And there, according to all surveys in that period, the impact on the unorganized sector was between 60 and 80%. Punjab, Haryana, Delhi Chamber of Commerce, All India Manufacturers Association, State Bank of India, etc. So in fact, in that period, the rate of growth became negative. And today, the rate of growth is not more than 1 or 2%. The reason why it's low is because the unorganized sector is badly hit both by demonetization and GST.
But
and
so many months after remonetization, by now the effect should have gone, shouldn't it?
The reason is that as a result of that, credit offtake fell to its lowest point in 60 years, and in July, August, it has become negative, which has never happened. What does credit offtake becoming negative mean? The demand for investment is down, demand for consumption is down, demand for production is down. Second point is that the capacity utilization fell dramatically in that period. Already it was very low, 70 to 75%, and then it fell further. Now when capacity utilization goes low, investment slows down. Investment is very low, and if investment is low, it has a long-term effect. So in other words, note shortage may go, but the impact of it continues further because of the impact on output and capacity and so on.
Okay, demonetization still having an impact or no?
The residual effects of demonetization are still there. I just want to make another point, which is, I agree that this government is trying to attempt big structural transformative changes, and demonetization and GST have been cited as two of them. There are others too. But the problem, Vikram, is, which has been very nicely articulated by one of the economic thinkers of the Sangh Parivar, Gurumurthy, S. Gurumurthy. The sequencing of these big structural changes have been so disruptive that, as Devendra Sharma said, you had back-to-back droughts, two droughts, and incomes level already farmers shaky, rural wages were shaky, came demonetization, and before the effects of demonetization could wear off came the GST. So Gurumurthy says that businesses had not had time to recover. There's been one shock after the other. Now you could argue that there's some big surgeries going on, but can you conduct 3 surgeries in such a short span of time on a body which is already weak? By the way, economy was already slowing. I agree with that. It was already slowing from in the previous quarters before demonetization, and then the sharp decline came after. An RBI study, Vikram, of small industries shows Jan to March this year, after demonetization. RBI study of small industry shows that their sales were down 58%. Now, can you imagine if businesses suffer a 58% fall in decline in sales? What would be the impact on employment? What would be the impact on the economy?
Okay, I want to get Balshankar back on that, but before that, Sajid Chinoy now joining us from JP Morgan. Governments are always told, why aren't you moving fast enough? Why aren't you doing something big bang? And this government says, well, we've tried to do something big bang. We did demonetization, which was big bang, GST, which was big bang. So why is everyone complaining? Venu says, well, sometimes 2 big bangs or 2 drastic surgeries back to back after one another could potentially end up killing the patient, even if those are good in absolute terms. What would be your take on that, Sajid?
I don't agree. Demon was good in absolute terms, but
GST is good in absolute terms. Demonetization, many people have still not understood the benefits.
I have not understood.
Sajid, first of all, we are still trying to figure out, is the patient terminally ill? Is the patient facing a minor cold, or is there no patient at all? The economy is doing fine. And then if ill, why is the patient ill?
Thanks, Vikram. I think, as always, the truth lies somewhere in between. The patient is not terminally ill. It's just we've had a confluence of many events over here. Let's just step back and understand that the growth has been slowing for 5 quarters. Some of this was inevitable. We're comparing last year's growth to the year before, when oil prices collapsed. And, when oil went from 110 to 40, growth in India picked up by more than 100 basis points. But that was always a one-time temporary windfall. So at some point when oil prices stabilize, growth was always going to start softening. In addition, we're embarking on deleveraging.
Sajid, just press the pause button. Sajid, if I could just interrupt you.
It's a necessary prerequisite.
Yeah, Sajid, if I could just interrupt you. Hang on. You're saying something that, if anything, is slightly worrying, because if you're saying that growth was a one-time spurt when the economy was growing at 6-7%, let's remember the base has also come down in general terms. Are we saying that the Indian economy is not destined to be growing at more 5-6%? Because we were expecting something completely different. We were thinking 8%, 9% is our karma for the next 10 to 15 to 20 years. You're saying that we should be happy even with 5-6% growth rates?